It was like we were kind of in
Hey everybody, welcome to the Power Ranking Show with me, CA, joined by HellrangeR, Mamba, and Rexdreams. Thank you all so much for being here. As you all know, this is part 2, and we're just here to just chill out. A happy new year to everybody. Start this new year off right by talking about what we can expect in this year upcoming in Valorant esports in general, and just recollect where our rankings did lie and where we expect them to change. So just hi everybody, how you guys doing? HellrangeR, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you? Thank you for having me, Ashay.
My pleasure, definitely. I'm really glad to see that all of you are here because now I think we get to really talk to the community about what we expect. But Mamba, I think you personally, having been a player and also from our end as a caster, have a slightly different perspective. So like, I'm excited to hear your views. But for now, how are you, bro? How are you dealing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's a new year, so just taking things slowly. Usually, you'd expect January to April to be the off season, but things have changed in the past
Yeah.
couple of years. But yeah, just laying low, taking a step back, enjoying having a cup of coffee and maybe some chips.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important, right? I think after the last 5 months of hectic action to just sort of settle down, I think that's what we really are here for, to just sort of let the audience chill with us, but chill with us while remembering that there's a lot more to come. But actually, you've been there with me from the start, from the very first cast. So how are you doing,
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. On vacation from uni right now, so
man?
got some time to just relax, watch some Valorant, to play some Valorant myself. So I was just taking it lightly as Mamba and Bhavin said already.
Awesome. I mean, so I think in general, like now that our introductions are done, just to clear it off for chat, like we're just here to chill out. So like you're very welcome to interact with us. But the main topic, the main course of our discussion will be first looking back at the part one show. If you guys haven't watched that, make sure you check it out. And then going towards like the future in general throughout the show. In the middle, we will have a Q&A, so you'll have a chance to give your questions through and have us discuss on the basis too. But for now, let's just start off with the rankings in itself that we already presented and really talk about what criteria we had for the rankings. For me personally, I weighted the current form when we did make it, which is like December mid, a lot more than I weighted the past form. And I feel like that might have come to bite me a little with a couple of the rankings, but there were a couple of picks that I made purely on gut. So where did you guys lie? Like, where was your push? Like, HellrangeR, what about you?
So for me, it's pretty much actually I rated them based on all the events throughout the past few months. I did consider a few of the roster changes though, and what impact they would have based on the lineups, the lineup changes that came to the fore. But I pretty much tried to bring a balance between current form and past form as well, because I did not want to discount anyone who has had maybe a few good months in the past and is struggling right now for one season or one game or a couple of best of three. So yeah, that was pretty much the parameter of my rankings.
There's a bit more leaning towards giving value to what has been achieved. That definitely makes sense. Mamba, what about you? I think yours is the most concise of all around.
That is true. My rankings were fairly simple. I was like 1, 2, and 3. And if we talk about the order, VLT, Global Esports, and XTZ. And then I was like everyone else. And the reason why I say that is because, sure, the top three teams, if the audience, I don't know if they're seeing the image or not, but if you look at the top three, they are exactly the same in all the four rankings. These are three of the most consistent teams in the country. The rest of the teams, I don't feel they're consistent enough yet to have a proper rank. Because one day, if imagine if Team Villainous is having a good day, they'll probably take down Gordel. If Gordel is not having a bad day, they'll probably lose to tryouts. Maybe Paratroops might take down all the teams. So, it really comes down to those individual days and how the teams are feeling. And I do feel that the roster changes are happening quite often. So that, you can't really sit down on one team and be like, hey, man, no, this team is doing great. So I am a little more harsh in terms of expecting that consistency, not just in the game, but outside the game as a team as well. So that is why I mentioned that. Except for the top three, I believe everyone else is on the same page.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like you're valuing tiers essentially, where like a team has to reach a certain benchmark to be able to compete with the very best, and that definitely applies considering what like the progress we've seen from like the fifth to eight teams to now becoming trying to get into the top five. But actually, being there from the start as both a caster and analyst,
Yeah.
I think our lists were surprisingly similar. So like, give me your criteria for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, watching most of these teams compete from AMD Valorant Cup, which was like ages ago, just when the game came out, and the whole of Series 1 to Series 5. Like, obviously, we've seen the teams grow from what they were in the starting and what they've now become. So if you look at my rankings, a lot of them were based on just like how consistent the teams have been. Like if you look at like Reckoning, before Reckoning, they were Nezuko Gaming, where they showed a lot of consistency in the earlier games. Godel, before this, they were. Wait, what are they? What is the hostel called? I keep forgetting the name. Where
Far,
which
far.
no, 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 not even far. Before far,
Far.
yeah, far to yeah, far as well. They were really consistent. Villainous obviously showed all all TC events, phase two without a doubt. Tryouts, really great results coming in. But I think they've disbanded. I'm not too sure on that. So obviously that part of my ranking has changed. And Battle Troops also great. Like we've seen good results coming out from them throughout the whole TC series, and really great players, individually skilled players as well in them. So yeah, a lot of based on consistency, like one or two, like just the core being so good and like having great like players in them, and that's what led to me being putting them in my top 10.
Yeah, basically valuing
Yeah,
consistency over the last months of competitive
definitely,
esports
definitely.
and
Yeah.
looking to push on the base. I definitely get that. So I want to ask all of you, and this is just an open question, any of you, right? But like, I want to ask, like, do you think, like, now having seen the results of the last month, having seen like a couple of teams really surprised for me, like for example, yeah, Gaming really surprised me with their performance, and for example, teams like XTZ going down, Godlike finishing third, not really what I was expecting, but they made a lot of progress. Any like particular notes that you've made from the last month's performance, and that would result you in changing your rankings now?
I think I'll let someone else go for it first.
To be honest, I don't see any consistency in most of the teams here right now. I'd say maybe like obviously Velocity is the most consistent team, and even us or any other team right now, I don't think there's that amount of stability or consistency where like as Mamba said, right? It's us, like it's Velocity, us, and the next XTZ, and then everyone else comes apart. So right now, I think the next season will be crucial in determining, who takes the top five or who makes way, and maybe puts their way into the first position, because right now, as of now, I don't see any consistency. Most of the teams, they're either newly formed or they have had roster changes, and they're just playing together maybe for the first time, or just playing together till they find an or just playing for the sake of it. And all of these are mostly ex CSGO professional players, so that is why you can see them maybe in the top 8 or the top 10 or the top 5 or the TC Challenger series, because they're all experienced FPS gamers. But when it comes to Valorant and in that performance, you can see most of the teams are not at that stable level yet, because they haven't played Valorant as a team that much. So I think till the time that happens, it will be this will be the rankings, like these will be the rankings that we will see, because these were most of the players who were at the top of the CSGO scene, and right now are at the top of the Valorant scene as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what HellrangeR said. Like, so I was watching Jason on stream one day, right? And he said the players at the top of a Valorant scene right now are not the best players. They're the players who swapped the first and have like adapted to the game the best. Like, because right now, like this, we see like as the scene has progressed, right? We see a lot of new players coming into the scene who perform really, really well. And talking about like the recent results coming out from teams, we cannot really like use them and put them in stone, because a lot of teams waiting to get a boot camp so that they can get them together. A lot of teams just making roster changes, like God, like just putting in that make a huge roster change coming in from them that completely changes your play style. So like this off season right now, like when there's no major tournaments happening except ESPL that's starting in the next few days, the first qualifier. So this is where the teams really get tested the strength as to like what they've been working on while they were on a break, or what they've been able to put up in the meantime, and what they've been able to do with their roster. So they really comes to see like what have you worked on and who's worked the hardest over this free time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. Working hard over the free time, sure, but I do believe that it's not really a question of working just hard. It's the entire mindset, because Hellranger mentioned that most of the players that you see on the top are the same players that were on the top in the CS:GO scene as well, which who have transitioned now to Valorant. And for anyone who's been around for more than 2 years understands this, that no, we had CS:GO teams in the country who did well, who did decent, no doubt. But when they went on the international circuit, except for maybe a couple of teams, they were not really able to make the mark. So it's not even honestly. So the question of boot camp comes up a lot, and I believe that with the current set of players that we have, these are tried and tested players. I'm not talking about the new players. For example, Strix. I think he's 17 or 18, so he's a wonderful player, has a lot of potential. So the question over here is not if there's a boot camp or if there's a circuit. Sure, it's important, but that is not what is holding us back. It's the entire mindset, and I'm certain that HellrangeR would agree on this because imagine the same set of players going back 5 years who've been playing it out, who've had all the opportunities, they've had orgs at their disposal as well. Then the question, the question always comes up like, why have we not been able to make a dent in the international circuit? And the answer to that definitely is not the lack of facility, but I think there are much more deep rooted reasons for that.
Yeah, definitely. Like the experience, especially of being able to compete at that level, even like understanding that hey, this is not just gaming as such anymore. This is more competitive gaming. Like the idea of esports as a whole. Very, even though it has been very prevalent in India in the past, I feel like only now, like we are seeing people get used to the idea of Valorant esports. So I feel like slowly but surely we're seeing players like, as you mentioned, Strix, even like Sami. I think for me personally, I not much
Yeah.
a big follower of the CS:GO scene. But I think players like these who are very young are really using Valorant as their jump pad of sorts to sort of put themselves in the limelight. Like hey, we are just as good as the experienced players as well. And then it comes down to that mindset, as you guys mentioned, like the experience of knowing where to push and how to work smart as well as work hard at the same time gives you such a big edge. But it's a really interesting point that all of you, I think, mentioned, which is the idea of, as Malav said, transitioning from CSGO to Valorant early. Like we're seeing a lot of pros now, like former CSGO well-known pro like Havan, they shifted a little later as compared to like the Velocity squad or the GE squad. And you can see even though like in CSGO they were on a similar level, on Valorant there is a difference. So I want to ask you, like over the last 5 months, is there like do you think there has started to be a small difference in being like instead of CSGO pros shifting to Valorant pros, now the people who just weren't as successful in CSGO are starting to come up, like the younger players. Do you think the roster changes coming into 2021 will show that? As in, like these newer players who made their name only through Valorant, will they start getting a bit more value, or do we still value that CSGO experience?
Um,
Yeah, hell, you go
no,
on.
go on, Mamba.
So what I was saying was, sure, there are going to be new players who've not been around because that's just how it is in esports. Every year you're going to see new players, but of course with the launch of new game like Valorant, it gets more amplified because people who did not maybe get the opportunity or the competition is a lot. It's easier to break out early on when the circuit is just beginning, when the circuit isn't in its nascent stage. But at the same time, the experience that you get from Counter Strike, because I still believe that Counter Strike is definitely the gold standard of learning FPS games and the principles behind it. Because no matter where you come from, if you played Counter Strike, you can transition to any FPS game in the world because the principles that you learn in that game, I'm certain all of you guys would agree that that transitions really, really well. Sure, the experience is going to count, but you can't discount the new players as well. And honestly, I believe that the newer players are going to be the ones making more impact than people who've played the game before. And I'll tell you the reason why as well. Because when you've been in the circuit for say 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, you build up certain notions about how to approach things. So a lot of times, this is a give and take. I'm not saying this is something that works out 100% of the times, but you need fresh ideas, you need fresh faces to challenge what has been the norm. And I personally am looking out for the newer players more because I know that the old dogs are more than capable of dominating and destroying everyone in the country. And we're seeing that the top three teams in the country right now are filled with old players from Counter Strike who transition, who've proved themselves, the legends of Indian Counter Strike circuit. So no doubt about that. But I'm personally looking out for the newer players more because I believe that they might just be able to challenge the norm.
Um, I think the point where Mamba said right that we need newer set of eyes, I agree and disagree in two senses. I'll ask all of you, if I ask all of you guys, right, who is the standout player for, right? You'll say either someone like a Strix or maybe like a Binks or anyone who plays a duelist. Most of you guys have named players who are playing duelist in the people who are standout for, and the reason about that being because you can see their raw skill or raw ability when it comes to playing a duelist, and they're getting the frags in that,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And as I said, right now the Indian scene is not stable, so anyone who's fragging, quote unquote, is coming top 5, top 3, top 4 in various events. What I feel is lacking right now is the ability to play the game at a higher level, as Mamba said earlier, right? the problem is not just about boot camping or not just about playing or not having the skill set. It's about, learning the game in a deeper sense than just going and pressing W and fragging. Let's say maybe you will win 5 out of 10 games by just your raw individual skill, but I'd rather have a player who can win me 7 out of 10 situations by using both his individual skill and his game sense to clutch us the rounds, rather than have a player who'll just go in ham and get either 5 kills or go in and throw the round, right?
Yeah.
That is my perspective of playing the game. So as far as the newer players are concerned, I am like, I look at it in two sense. Maybe so if you look at someone like a Wimp, he's a smart player. He's also a new player. He used to play CS:GO, but he was still comparatively a newer player. And he puts in the effort. He works hard. Even Binks, I know, as an IGL, I have had a few words with him. He puts in the efforts. He watches matches. He works hard, right? So for me, there's different kinds of player. You either like as even when we were talking about the first part, when I was speaking about Strix and I think Pasha, I said I'm very excited about how they are as players. Let's put Sami into the same category as well. But um, how do they do as team players is something completely different than how do they do as puck players or how do they do as players right now. Because honestly, I'll call the matches which are happening right now as puck matches, since most of the teams haven't practiced or not boot camping or are just formed, right? Like it'll essentially be me, you, like the four of us and one more guy talking in game and playing the game, right? So they are still playing pug matches for most of the parts. I want to see what they do against VLT or what they do against us, maybe, right? Because we have had some kind of practice, or any team who has had some kind of a practice, right? And when all teams have that practice, I want to see what they do then, right? Because after that, they are not going to get the free shots which they get right now. People are not going to be wandering around. People are not going to stand out in the open. People might still throw the 3v1s they do, but what I mean is it'll still be a bit stronger than what it is right now, where there are just people coordinating and playing in a sense. So that is what I'm waiting or looking forward to in the younger players, that do they have that adaptability or do they have that mindset to play the game like a game and not just play it as run and gun.
Oh, absolutely. And I think so. My idea of saying what I just said was completely in line with what HellrangeR said. I 100% agree with that. Just that, sure, I might have maybe explained it a little differently, but I really like the fact that the idea of playing the game is not just pressing W and clicking heads. Sure, that is the end goal because you had to eliminate the
Yeah,
opposition. Otherwise, you're not going to win the game.
yeah,
So
yeah, for
clicking
sure.
heads is something is definitely going to be a part of the game. Sure, and he mentioned something that most of the teams are playing bugs. And I remember having a conversation with CA when I was playing for paratroops.
Ah,
So my round with paratroops, I think it went on for what, 2 months, and I eventually stepped down because of my casting duties. In 2 months, HellrangeR, we had
Yeah.
one scrim, literally one scrim, and that was on the first day when we made the team. We had no practice, we had no strategies. It was all based on in-game comps, and that just proves your point, right? That most of the
Yeah.
teams are playing pugs right now, and that is exactly the reason why I did not rank anyone from the fourth position as well.
So would you guys say like the reason teams are playing pug right now is because they don't have the time and motivation to like practice, or is it just that like now the scene is new, so they just don't try their hand out at the game, and like there's a lot more money in Valorant than it was in CS:GO, so they're just playing for fun. So what do you think is the reason behind just bugging instead of sitting down and scrimming and stuff?
Well, from what I've seen, few of the players are dipping their hands into both the leagues. They are playing CS and Valorant as well, which I'm not saying is something wrong, but I don't think they are the players who are in the salaried orgs or who are playing full time right now. But you still see them in top 8 appearances or something of that sort, right? Because the scene is so young and they have been playing CS:GO, so as you said, they have that advantage. But apart from that, I think there have been teams which have been just formed right now as the scene is picking up, right? So we saw Godlike pick up a roster, we saw XTZ pick up a roster right now. We even saw like, I don't want to say, but I know even a few more teams are looking forward to picking up picking up rosters. So like I think once we have that set and once we have teams practicing, I think that is the time when like I don't know, like even right now I feel even if you don't have an org, you should be practicing, because like in CS:GO I did not have an org for the first 4.5 years. So
Yeah.
That does not mean that I did not practice or did not put in my 100%. I'd rather put in even more to get an org or to show an org that I'm worthy, right? So that is something I think it depends on the players and the teams as well, what their mentality is. If they just want to try, but right now I feel that people are just at a stage where they want to try out and feel the game and try out different players basically, whether these player combinations work, whether they don't work. So I think that is the reason why people are not practicing so much. I hope so. But if that is not the reason and you're already finalized on a team and you're still not practicing, then I honestly believe that people are wasting their time.
Yeah, definitely.
That is true.
I see the idea, like as you guys are mentioning, especially like the point you mentioned, like about all of us picking more or less duelists because of the fact that the game is so new and the raw fragging power really speaks out. And I was really surprised on that basis in the last months of the games because one player that really stood out to me was Lightning Fast. I think seeing him shift from his previous like duelist role onto the Sentinel, where he's still able to retain some of that fragging power, but I can see a bit more of game sense slowly but surely developing. It sort of shows me the path forward for all of the teams, like how you start combining that understanding of the game, as you guys mentioned, really use that practice to come out on top. But like what I'm really excited about is the roster changes y'all are mentioning. I think we know a couple already. Like Deathmaker
Yeah.
to Godlike, that's not new news, but I feel like now only once they get to their boot camp, they're starting
It was
to
more
come
like
in.
shocking news, to be honest, because I remember playing a 10
Yeah.
man alongside him, and we were having a random conversation, and he mentioned that no chance because I remember he was maybe looking overseas into CS orgs,
Yeah,
and then suddenly
definitely.
the move comes in as moving to Valorant and then got L. It was very shocking. But then
Yeah,
again, at the same time, of course, it's a personal choice, no doubt. But it was just very surprising.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean because I think a lot of the audience were expecting him to stay in CSGO. But I, for one, am really happy that he did come through to Valorant. Like, definitely a player of immense caliber that excited to just have in the scene as a whole. Like, really force everybody to step up and make their marks on the same level. But I think a couple newer changes, like, for example, the one I really wanted to ask all of you about is Meow. Meow, she just joined Yeah Gaming and she's the first female professional I think in the Valorant scene right now is at least, and I think that's something I'm really excited about because like esports in general is a very inspiring story in India, but to have a girl gamer in esports competing on the same level, playing just as good as every other player out there, for me that's really inspiring.
That is for sure. And here's the thing, right? Meow has been around for as long as I've been around practically in CS:GO because she started off with the game, and I'm certain she's played the older versions as well. But the point over here is the fact that of course she's been playing really well. And I remember I think she played against VLT in one of these tournaments,
Sky
and she
Sports, the
Sky
final.
Esports, yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she played really well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I saw a lot of buzz on the social media.
Mhm.
So she also gets her experience from CS:GO again. So of course, not discounting anything, but it's really inspiring. Number one, and she's not the only player. I do remember. I think there was one more player called Casper who used to play back in CS:GO.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting for a proper female roster in Valorant because I do believe that we absolutely have the capability. We have the players as well, and it's just a matter of time until we see a proper female roster.
Yeah, there was one female only tournament that like obviously they are on like that was done recently. I think that Casper was playing in the tournament if I'm not wrong. And there's a lot of other players like Meow, Rose, a lot of them were stepping in. And see, I'm not sure if Meow's confirmed for the roster. I just think she's standing in for the meantime. So while they're looking for a permanent fifth, yeah. So I'm not too sure about that. And yeah, so definitely Meow was always an underrated player in CS:GO as well. She represented like us at an international LAN with GE, if I'm not wrong, at that like long ago.
Yeah, G
But
Rain,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah, and yeah,
No,
and
but
talking about
from
yeah, sorry, please go on.
sorry to cut you there, but yeah, I think Mia is trying out for them. From what I
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
conversation with Tito, it's
yeah.
not like she's waiting till a fifth comes in. He said that they are genuinely trying out with her. It's not just a stand-in for
Oh,
an
okay.
event or two. Just genuinely going to try out with her for the next few events, and then they'll evaluate and see where it goes. Right. So she's not confirmed on the team yet, but she's not just standing in basically per se. She's actually giving a proper tryout in Aya Gaming. And I don't know why I find the name really funny.
I
It's
think it's just a meme that started with a couple of
Tivo, right?
influencers just going like, ah
Ah,
yeah.
yeah,
So that is
at
how
least they should have
the
kept it. Oh yeah,
If there's
But
Titan,
here's the thing, though. Sorry to cut you off.
no
But
problem.
I think this is going to be a very inspirational story for all the gamers in the country, irrespective of how they identify themselves. But the fact that if Meow ends up in that team as a proper fifth, it's going to be an incredible storyline because for as long as we can remember, I don't think we've had a female game. Not that it makes a difference in esports, okay? It has absolutely, I believe, it has absolutely zero impact having either a female team playing in a male tournament, quote unquote. Because I do. So I remember asking a question about having a female exclusive tournament. Sure, for awareness, it makes sense. But apart from that, I do believe that all the players, irrespective of what the gender is, what the sex is, I think they're all more than capable of competing in the same playing field. And Meow is just proving the point.
Yeah, right. It ends up coming down to like not about skill at all between male and female gamers. Just the idea, like the concept even of women actually going up and be like, hey, I can play, I can be just as good. Because I think from sports in general, that has been a very like controversial and debated topic where we definitely have separated sports. We have like male and female sports, but into esports, not necessary at all.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a reason why, because the physical aspect comes in
Yes.
when you go out and play physical sports. There's of course a physical aspect where men or male bodies are generally much more capable. That way they're stronger, and that is how it's just been. So with regards to esports, it doesn't really matter. Sure, there have been some. I've actually read research papers, and I don't want to quote them right now because I won't be able to link it to them. So if I might have the link, maybe sometime in the future, and I end up on the podcast again, I'll come up with that. But of course, in esports, it's a level playing field. It's the same mouse, it's the same keyboard, it's the same monitor. It doesn't matter. So as long as you have the skill, as long as you have the wits, as long as you have the mechanics, you can go out and compete over there.
I think for sure, like that, the entire topic itself is a very deep topic that there's plenty to talk about. So definitely something we can look into to like try to make an exclusive episode just for that, because I've heard plans from Riot where they are trying to do just the female thing, and there's been a lot of backlash from the community because of that. Because as you said, like there really is no like other than access, no reason to like even consider in terms of skill trying to separate male and female players.
I think awareness is fine. Like if you're trying to build up the awareness for female esports or female gamers, sure, go on and do there as many exclusive tournaments as you want. But apart from that, I don't see the point.
Yeah, definitely. But like coming back to the roster changes, so I think one topic that is on the edge of everybody's like lips, so to say, or like the edge of everybody's mouth, but something that I don't think any of us are ready to talk about in detail just yet. I think can mention though is Noble. When they did part ways with their old roster, they did mention in their Instagram post that they are definitely going to come back to Valo with a new roster. And I think given the fact that right now, like the scene in general is on a slight bit of a break, no like continuous tournaments planned as such, more like smaller events happening is the perfect time to make that re-entry into the scene. So I'm really excited about them coming back. Do you think they will come back? Any of you guys? I mean, I know all of us know a bit and pieces of news that we really can't talk about here, but in general, like about the organization, like I feel like the way they picked up even their old roster, they're not an organization that just takes stuff lightly. They're gonna make a bang whenever they come back.
Yeah, they've definitely they picked up one Indian roster already in Wild Rift, and I've heard like they've continued to plan on expanding to other mobile esports. So they're definitely here to stay in India. It's not like they were just like one time roster and then we'll close out or expand our operations in India. So they definitely do have plans, and yeah, right now like there are potential players they could pick up who have shown their promise, who've shown they have the potential, and they could form a good team around them if they would like to. So this is a great time because everyone's like on the similar level right now as through Mamba's rankings, as we can see like the level of consistency. So they can build a championship roster for themselves right now. So it's not something shocking. Like I wouldn't be shocked if I see them coming back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it comes down to whether or not you can put that right team together, because I feel like there is a slight shortage of like controller or duelist players. Sorry, controller or sentinel players as compared to like just duelists in general. So like we'll see if you can find the right team synergy, because especially with teams getting to the boot camp, right? And that gets me to my next question. I think in general the top like 3 or 4 teams, they are starting to get to their boot camp. I know Godlike for one, the players have announced that they are going to get to. I think global esports as well, they are like getting ready with their boot camp. I think most of the top teams will be ready and finalized with the boot camp by the end of Jan, if not the end of Feb, very soon basically. So I wanted to ask you guys, how much of a difference do you think that will make in getting them to compete against like VLT or Team Mahi, I should call them now, and like how much of an impact it will make to the scene because of that level of competition?
Honestly, I think so. It's more. It makes a much more impact in Valorant than in CS, because in CS everyone had this same smokes, the same flashes, the same equipment as per se, and to make a strategy or to make any plan, I could do it alone, or any player could do it alone and decide for, okay, where we will use this five smokes or flashes or three smokes or two smokes or two mollies, anything. You could decide anything on your own, right? And you knew the counter abilities are going to be the same. But here it's not. In Valorant this is not the case. You have n number of different agents who have different abilities, and even the counter to those, let's say, strats or those calls or those defaults you make is going to be different based on what hero pools the other agents have or the other team has right now. So that is when when it comes to the boot camp, you can have a much clear and much more concise discussion, and you can see it faster. Right now when we are practicing, I cannot, I cannot use every ability in the game while using my own character or while we are discussing something, right? And it's a bit harder to focus on all five people at the same time. It was much easier in CS:GO because everyone knew what was going to happen, or what, like, a smoke is a smoke, a flash is a flash, a molotov is a molotov. Everyone knows what is going to happen or what we are going to do. But right now it's a bit more different. And even in terms of practicing agents and improving your agent pool, not individually but as a team, I think that will have a greater impact on when we go into the boot camp. But before that, when you're talking about lineups, right, I feel any team, right? Any team who's looking to make a lineup, please don't pick up five duelists. You are not going to win the game, right? You are not going to win the game. Don't pick up five players who are killing 30 people in TEC Challenger Series. Please, that is not going to help you win the game.
I,
Pick up people for their role, and if they know how to play the agents. Because unless you are going to do that, you will be stuck between a rock and a hard place.
this
So
frustration, it feels like it's stemming from somebody who actually knows this has happened somewhere.
yeah, it has. It honestly has, right? I mean, people from Noble are my friends. No, not Noble. I mean, the current XTZ are my friends. But when they first had their iteration of roster, I don't think they had a lot of support players in their team, because Sai has always been a star player. He has always been that aggressive player, that upper, and to see him play Killjoy or play Omen is a completely different thing from what his play style is. Right? You talk about Sami, whom they took just now. He's also he also is used to being the star player, being the jet player of the team. Now again, to see him play on an Omen is also a different thing, right? Obviously there's a learning curve, just like lightning fast had, right? He was a duelist, and we wanted someone for the sentinel role per se, for that meta which was being used in the past. So that is why we took him on, and we told him, okay, so right now we need someone who can turn into a sentinel. But it took him a month or two, at least 2 months, for him to get used to that role or get accustomed to that role, learn the ins and outs of that role. So I'm not saying that you can't do that, but then you can have that one player who's learning. You cannot have three people learning three different roles in a team. So that is why I feel, it's a bit harsh on the players as well, because I think all of them are exceptionally wonderful players. But then if you don't have your role in the team, and let's say if two or three players are playing different roles, then I don't think it's going to work out regardless of, you know, how much effort you put in. Because if three players are learning, it's going to take a longer time than if one player is learning per se, because all the other roles are already clarified or known to the players.
That is true, and that is actually what made my comeback easier. Not having to pick up a role, just picked up Omen, and I'm good to go. I don't have to fight.
I
Okay,
mean,
so Hellrange, I have one question for you, right? Since you're mentioning
Yeah,
about how like anti-stratting and like agent, like you're talking about how anti-stratting is much harder and different in Valorant, right? So,
yeah.
so, so if like let's say with given like the number of agents expanding, right? if we had like a phase in the game, like R6 has this Rainbow Six, where they have
Yeah.
the sixth pick kind of phase, where the opponent's agent picks and your agent picks are shown to each other, and it gives you like
Okay.
a 30 to 40-second time where you get a sixth pick, like one of your players can change the agent they're playing and swap over to
Hmm.
another agent. So do you
Yeah.
think something like that has a place in Valorant in future, where like it'll make anti-stratting much more, like much easier, or make the game more interesting? So I just wanted to know your opinion about that.
Well, I think so. That sounds really interesting. I had honestly never played Rainbow Six
Uh,
Siege, so I was not aware that, something of that kind is possible. But now that you say it, I think that's very, unique, or that's something different or out of the box, which I'd like to see. Honestly, like I always feel that you either adapt or you die, right? So if something like that comes out, I think that will force a lot of teams to be adaptive, not just before the game, but in the middle of the game as well, and even in the middle of their picks. So I think that is something, if they introduce to Valorant, I really look forward to, because then that brings up a whole new set of strats and ideas that you need to be prepared for.
Definitely. I think Riot did announce that, not that particularly, and that sounds really interesting. I hope they look into that, like the idea of changing your pick after the draft. But Riot did announce, like, at least by the end of this competitive scene, so like at the end of 6 months, maybe they will start working on some sort of pick and ban lineup. Because coming from a League of Legends background, the draft section of a competitive game is undoubtedly like one of the most important aspects of that game. Like the idea of playing mind games before the game even starts, like banning out some agents, like or knowing which agents your other people are going to pick, like power picks and counter picks, and all of that really comes into play. So I think it will be really exciting to see how really all the teams end up approaching that once that comes through, and how Riot does bring into the table that. But I think all of our viewers are getting a little bit restless. They want to ask us a certain things. So I think we'll just take a few minutes, like 5 to 10 minutes, to address them. And if you guys have any questions, like this is the time to go it. Looking at the chat in general, there is one interesting topic that I did see. They wanted us to talk about the single duelist meta that came through for a little bit. And I think in conjunction with that, perhaps the triple duelist meta too, because something that's Mahi has been playing. So like, what are like your views, or like all of you, on that? Like the single duel, like the breach, power of the breach, and the counter by just kicking the sentinel out of your team.
Hell,
I'll go first. um, so I've been at the receiving end and the giving end of both of those things. I'll start off right. I think the triple duelist is viable on certain maps. I don't think it's viable on all the maps. And right now, I think Killjoy is at a point where you can still include a Sentinel in your team. I think most of the teams know how to play against a Cypher at this stage. It's still viable in certain maps, but I'd say people prefer Killjoy over the Cypher right now in most of the situations. And as far as the single duelist or the triple duelist meta goes, like you can, according to me, right? You can play in any style of the game as long as you know how you are going to play that style, right? You can pick any combination in the game as long as you have a game plan about how you are going to do different things, not just one thing. You cannot pick a hero pool and say like, oh, we can do this A strat or we can do this B strat, and we have these two or three strats, and then let's go, let's just wing it after that. No, you need to have defaults. You need to have executes. You need to have backup options if things don't work. You need to have a play style built around that agent pool. So whether it be, so let's say if it's a three duelist meta, you need to be aware of your flank. You can either play a 1-3-1 where one of the players is always securing your flank and gathering that information, or you can go 5 men faster, like within the first 20 or 25 or the 30 seconds of the round by showing the same default at the start of the round, right? Or you can, go split up 2-1-2 and try to go for picks, or a 3-1-1 on different parts of the map. So basically, that's the kind of style you are going to play with a triple duelist, since you don't have the luxury of someone having secured a flank like a Cypher Trip or a Killjoy turret or a Killjoy alarm bot or whatever that may be, right? So, and now let's switch it up and talk about the single duelist meta, where you have the sentinel securing your back. You have the single duelist kind of being the front runner or the turret, and the breach backing him up at all times using his flashes for him to secure their angles. the SOA using his drone, his dart to get information so that that single duelist can do the most damage, right? Now let's assume in a single duelist meta, he knows where the player is and the player is blind. The only job that the single duelist has to do is go and kill him. Of course, I mean, it can be unfortunate that, he the opponent kills him blind or whatever, but that is what basically happens when you're playing a single duelist. He's the one creating the space or exploiting that information with the help of the flash or with the help of the support players, basically. And that is what we used to do against most of the teams, right? So, which is why you'll see SK Rossi in a different world in the part of the map, whereas we are maybe a bit far behind. But every opponent he faces is either blind or is spotted. So that is the game plan. So according to me, you can play any like with any game plan. You can play even without any duelist or play with four duelists, but you need to have a game plan around that, and you need to know how you are going to work around that with different agent compositions, not just for one particular agent composition.
See, I'll tell you the deal with SK Rossi and Global Esports. Okay, HellrangeR is gonna be like, Rossi, go kill. And I remember, I distinctly remember we were playing against Global Esports when I was a part of Paratroops, and we were playing Split. And Blackhawk from behind with his breach, every single round they hit it, okay? You would flash, a guy on ARAM would not be able to do anything, or maybe would just probably give it up. Rossi would go up, clean him out. And here's the thing, right? So again, it depends on a lot of factors. Getting back to the question, of course, I'm going to talk about the story later on. It depends on so many factors that it's really difficult to give a definitive answer as to what meta works. And I'll tell you why. If you have a player like Rossi who's going to kill, okay, he's not going to miss his shots. Very rarely does he miss his shots. He's mechanically gifted. He knows what to do. With a player like that, sure, you can back him up. You can give him all the support in the world. And you can also be content with the fact that wo jaake marega, he's going to be alone, but he'll still get the frags for your team. With a player like that, sure, single duelist meta. And we've seen that work as well. These guys destroyed us. They spanked us. And, they knew what they were doing. They had a plan as well. The retakes were really good. I remember even on the attacking side with the breach and the omen counter flashes coming in, and they came in with a plan. So again, multiple factors. The most important thing, you need to know what your playstyle is, and second is to be able to execute it properly. Because hey man, anyone can be like, "Nee, we want to play aggressive," but if you can't really execute that playstyle, right, then there's no point. Again, it depends on the kind of map you're playing, and two of the most other important things are, one, again, HellrangeR mentioned the flanks depending on what setup you play. If you play three duelists or one duelist, so it comes down to the temperament of individual players as well. Because if players who want to be proactive in the game, it still makes a little more sense for you to have three duelists and nobody guarding your flank. Because if you're being proactive, you need to be really really proactive. You can't go into a site and then again wait it out for the next 30 seconds because you've already compromised your flank. So it's a multitude of reasons. It's layers and layers and layers, and it really depends on how you feel your team is and if you can execute that as well. And then comes the second part of what the other team is going to be playing. So it's so many factors over here that honestly I believe that in this sense there's no definitive answer. It's a vast possibility, a lot of combinations, a lot of permutations.
I
Yeah,
think
but like, so if you're looking at the like duelist meta, right? The reason it came out with TSM was because they know that they have three insanely good aimers. Like you have Wardell, who's just really insane on the op. You have Sabrosa since CS:GO days. He's been insane with his raw aim, and he's been accused of being a hacker so many times. And Drone has always been like really, really underrated, and on the Phoenix he was really good. So that's why like teams that have those aimers, so that's why it's like not like in my opinion. Like while I definitely agree with you, have the game plan, you can do it. But probably like some teams cannot run the three duelist meta when you don't have like you need to be really really like concise and really really clean with those executes because like the duelist right like after like he will use all of his a lot of his utility just to get himself into the site. But if things go wrong towards the entry, like the amount of utility that other agents that if you didn't bring out the other two duelists and ran the single duelist would have helped your other duelist to get into site or help you win the round is much different that than the other two duelists will bring to the board. So it's actually like you need the aimers. Like for example, like XTZ, I think are definitely capable of running something like that because you have Sami, good aimer, Harsh, good aimer, Sai, Opper, something like that works out for them. But I definitely don't think it's something that all teams will be running in the future.
yeah, I feel
See,
like go on, Helen.
yeah, so there is a saying that we have, or there is something we specifically say. You throw a stone within 1,000 Valorant players, and all of them will be good aimers. right? Aim is not the problem in the scene most of the time, right? I'll throw
Yeah.
10 stones and I'll find 9 good aimers. That is not the problem. The problem being, right? See, when you put up a triple duelist meta, in India, players who are playing the duelist, I'm not talking about Team Mahi. Okay, they know what their roles are, but I'm talking about in general, right? Like, okay, I am a duelist, I have to take a duel. Right. I am a duelist. I have to take. Even in a triple duelist meta, you need to understand there are certain roles, right, which you need to fulfill for your team. It is not just that, okay, since you're a duelist, okay, I'll take one fight here. Okay, I'll take one fight here. Okay. No, it does not work like that. Everyone will have different roles, even in the triple duelist meta. So if you see, let's take Team Mai, for example, when they're playing on Ascent, they'll have their Phoenix and their SOA and take aim in control, right? Most of the part, for most of the times, it'll be their Phoenix and the SOA taking aim in control. Whereas their Raze, he'll be gathering information at B or collecting control of B main, right? And uh, similarly, their Omen and their Jed, they'll try to mask at mid and take mid control or whatever be the sorts, right? Whatever different kinds of defaults they have. But still, the role of certain players will still remain the constant. Like the Raze is supposed to take B main control, he's supposed to punish any aggression, so that is what he'll be doing, right? And as a player, Excalibur knows when to stop, when he has to take the fight, when he does not have to take the fight. That is not going to happen in every team. If you tell me that, okay, team I is able to pull off the triple duelist only because they have the aim, I'm going to tell you no. It won't be the same. So let's say XTZ versus team I think XTZ was running a triple duelist
Yeah.
meta,
On a
and I
set.
think the score, yeah, on a send, both of the teams were had
Yeah.
exactly the same lineup, but the score was, I think, 13
5,
6.
13, 7, something
Yeah,
like
13
that.
5 or 13 6, and the second time it was 13 8,
Yeah.
something of the sorts, right? Now, if you
Yeah.
say in that sense, right, on paper, even XTC has amazing aimers. They can pull off that triple duelist meta. But it's not just about the aim. Again, it has to be about the game plan. It has to be about the practice. It has to be about the roles those teams fulfill. Of course, XTC has not had a great amount of practice yet. From what I know, they are going to move. They are also going to be moving into their boot camp really soon, I think, and with their roster change, which I think they are having right
Rexy
now.
has confirmed it. Rexy confirmed.
Yeah, actually confirmed it, right? So yeah, I think since Hika is moving out, I think they'll have another player. So maybe after that, if they practice and they have their role set, they can play with the triple duelist meta. But to say that if they have the aim, then they can play it is completely wrong. If you don't have if you have a good enough aim, I'm not saying a godlike aim like let's say an Excalibur, an Excurosius, a
Just have a half
Deathbreaker,
decent aim.
or a Sami. Yeah, if you have a good aim, if you get your confirmed kills, right? If you're not whiffing at every bullet, if you get your confirmed kills, if you know what your role is as a triple duelist, you can still pull it out. I don't think that it's not possible. Rather than if you just have raw aim and you don't know what your role as a duelist is in the team.
Yeah, definitely. Right? It becomes like a question like that match particularly really interesting. You mentioned it, the XCZ versus the Velocity or Team Mahi match, where like I was watching it personally and I was like, everything that you want the triple duelist composition to do, like the idea of a lurker causing a lot of noise, the Raze especially, like taking that ult point control, allowing his team to push in through mid. A lot of the rounds I saw Amitarasu using his flashes, being the entry fragger, taking mid control, and then like the rest of his team just waiting at the A main B main angle, because taking mid control essentially forces them to either funnel back into site or try to push towards and take control. Either way is advantage for Team Mahi. These like small control, right? The idea of what you're trying to do, you're really missing from teams. And as you mentioned, HellrangeR, I think it really comes down to the practice, like understanding each player and not just understanding your own role, but understanding your teammates' role. So you're able to make sure that you do your role perfectly, so your teammate is allowed to perfect his role. I think that's something that hopefully the teams will start cultivating. That's something that I was really happy to see in GE, in Series 5 especially. Like, it was a very clear, defined approach. I think I said this too many times while casting, but it was very exciting for me to see that there was an existing game plan coming into the game, and the execution for that game plan was going through perfectly every single round. Like, even though there were small mistakes, small refinements, like the idea in the third, like eagle eye perspective, like the overall idea of that game coming through, that was really exciting to see, to really show that hey, it's all about like just putting in the effort within your team itself to come up with that. And I think it also ties into what our viewers want us to discuss next, which is, so these roster changes, right? We're seeing a lot of roster changes. We even discussed about how the CSGO experience and the new players factor is something that is going to be very prevalent in the next few months. So now with all these roster changes, I think they want to know like how serious is it, in the sense that will it start impacting teams, or will we eventually, like, say maybe by April, March, May, start seeing teams just settle down into like a more permanent roster and have that roster just build on its foundation?
Well, I
I
for
see the smirk on HellrangeR's face, and I know what is going to come out of his mouth. But go on.
see some of it. Some of it it's going to be based on old habits, right? There has been habits of people changing rosters in CS:GO as well. And I'm not going to say that all the teams are going to be stable. I'm never going to say that, because I know for a fact that is never going to happen, be it sports or esports, because every team wants to win at the end of the day. But the difference being in esports, I believe that there's a lot more teamwork and coordination required. I uh, because every round is based on a synergy, right? Like maybe kind of like a football where you need to have everything in place, everything in synergy to make a certain play, right? But like I think that you need a bit longer for that, for that to come. You need to practice harder, you need to work harder, which some teams get very dejected by short term results. Like for example, when we made the G squad, or when I wanted to switch to Valorant, and when I was okay, let's switch to Valorant, uh, the first talk we had is, okay guys, we are going to lose for the first 2 months, and you have to be okay with it, because VLT or Mahi or Vertigo, they had started the game three months before us, I think, right?
Close beta.
So yeah, so we are like, okay guys, at least for the first 2 months you are not going to win, right? You will try to win, of course, you will have that winning mentality, you will want to win, but you are not going to win. So you need to be okay with that, because if you are not okay with that yourself, you'll never be able to move past that mental block and stick together as a team, right? You need to still improve, you need to still adapt. But at that time we knew, right, we knew what our end goal is. So we knew that okay, right now we are going to lose because they are better than us, they have more understanding of the game than us. And then when we had to make a roster change, which we did not want to, then again we knew that Lightning Fast had to adapt into a new role. So we again knew that it was going to take time, and we were prepared for all these stuff. So I think for me at least, or for our team, the good point we have is we keep everything out in the open, and we are very clear to each other with what's working, what's not working, what we need to do, and what page we all are on. Like even if we lose or if we have a fight, we keep all of that clear. I think that is something that is required for teams to stick in the longer run. They need to accept the fact that they are going to lose for some period of time, because they have just made that team. They are not gods, regardless of how strong a roster looks on paper. And they need to talk about their flaws. That is something we do very clearly. We are like, okay, this XYZ player or whatever it is, we talk about each other, and we're like, okay, this is something you have to work on. And if you don't, then it's a problem. So I think open communication is going to be key between teams if they have to maintain the roster. Right. I think that's the main part, right? And if you choose players who play different roles, you need to give them a couple of months to go, or you play into that role, right? Learn that role and make it truly their own, because till the time you do that, they are going to be uncomfortable, and you are going to be uncomfortable and get frustrated that they are not able to do it to their fullest. But if you are already prepared in your head and prepared that okay, I'm going to give them that much time, right? Or we are going to give him that much time as a team because he does not play this role, then in the long run you always know in your head, okay, that this is going to happen, but we'll still try our best.
Yeah.
No, I have a different angle to look at this. Like, sure, roster changes are a question always, and the reason why I had this smirk and HellrangeR had this smirk as well is because of the fact that we've seen roster changes throughout years. Okay, I remember one time. Okay, this is a okay. I'm gonna go on a tangent.
Uh-huh.
This is, I think, about 3 years back when Entity used to have two teams, Entity Blue and Entity Gold. And I remember there were some rumors or some murmurs about roster changes or whatnot. I slept in the afternoon. I wake up in the evening, and an entire roster change has been made in those 3 hours. Okay, Now, the point I'm trying to make here, now this is where I bring in my old comment about new players coming on board and challenging the norm. And the reason why I see this is because I don't look at roster changes as roster changes. Because if you keep on shuffling the same group of players again and again and again and again, of course, there was only one game up until now. There was Counter Strike, where the same pool of players were being churned out and they were being replaced in teams. So I believe that it's really a question of what you're doing outside the game and not just inside. Because let's be honest, with respect to skill, our players are just as skilled as anywhere in the world. I remember Wolf, if I'm not mistaken, playing against NIP, HellrangeR, if you remember,
Yeah.
and they did out aim NIP as well back in CS:GO. It's not like they don't have those skills. It's really about the mindset that goes outside the game. And there are players who are really disciplined. There are players who are really focused. HellrangeR is one example. Marzel is one more example. And then these are the players that the community should definitely be looking up to, no doubt. But there are stories as well where that, hey, the players are out partying, or maybe even on a tournament day where they are out for a LAN event. And I don't want to name anyone, but here's the deal: if you want to go out for a drink on a LAN event, sure, go out, do that. But at the same time, you cannot expect that peak performance, and it's not because, hey, you had a drink. It's about the mindset. It's about that sheer focus and willingness to commit to your craft. If you're not going to do that, then you can't expect those results. And this is something that I remember Optic briefly tried with a wellness coach. I think it was Zeus, who was helping them with the fitness. Then I remember who was the coach? HellrangeR, I forgot his name.
No,
For
why?
for
I
Optic.
think
YB, Lucas.
YB.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Lucas.
Lucas came in, they did the no sugar challenge as well. Things like these were unheard of back then. Nobody was doing it. It really is a question of what you're doing outside the game, your temperament and your mindset and your ability and willpower to commit to your craft. Because even as casters, there are things that we can't do. For example, if I go to a LAN event, I can't have anything cold or anything which has a lot of sugar, just to make sure that my throat doesn't get spoiled. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with players as well. They have to take care of their bodies, they have to take care of their minds. And at the most important part is, like, letting go of things which are not going to help you build upon your craft. And that is always going to be my bottom line. I don't care how many rosters you change, as long as you don't have that discipline outside the game, nothing's going to happen.
So, Mama, what do you think is like the key factor? Why are players not disciplined outside the game? Like, do you think it's just like, are they not? Why would you say they're not serious? Like, it's a full time
So
job.
here's the thing. I'm,
Right?
I'm not saying they're not serious.
Yeah,
Serious, of
yeah.
course. When they get signed up with an org, there are some players who get a little complacent. But the idea of so this is a massive tangent once again. Okay, so there's someone called Dr. Jordan Peterson, who's a psychologist, and he teaches as well. So he has a lecture on the top 1%, and why the top 1% is actually the top 1%, and how they commit to the craft. How many hours a week do they spend working on the craft? So it was a very long lecture. And most of you guys can go out and watch it. Just Google it or search for it on YouTube, and maybe if you can find the link, we'll share it with you guys on our social media. But the idea over here is the fact that they've not been exposed to the idea of you know giving up on all these things. When they think about discipline, they're like, oh no, we're going to play the game for 12 hours a day, and we're working hard. And I'm not saying they're not working hard, but everything else that happens outside the game is also affecting what is happening in the game. So it's more about lack of guidance, so to speak. Of course, there is a personal element to it with every player that has to commit. Some players are proactive, no doubt. Some people take that responsibility upon themselves. Again, I'm going to name Marzel because I've seen that player up close and personal. HellrangeR is very passionate about the game as well. We've all seen him at LAN events. Most of the pictures you see of him, he's probably going to be screaming and shouting, and that's one of the things he's known for, his passion for the game. And I'm certain he works hard for that as well. So it's about exposure to the idea of not just working inside the game, but actually working outside the game just as hard to make sure that your performance in the game stays on top.
Well, to add to that, I've seen most of my life, right? I've seen two kinds of players. I need just an organ who pay me a salary, then I'll work hard.
Yeah.
The second kind is I'll work hard till I get an organ salary, and then they think so. The problem is, right, most of the players, I'm not talking about any org right now, but most of the younger players or the players who are trying to come up, some of them, I'm not saying all of them have the problem, but some of them it's like, oh no, like an org should sponsor me, then I'll work hard, right? Or the second thing they have is they'll work hard, but as soon as they get into an org, they'll become complacent, Like, huh, now I've made it. The
So the
dream is
end,
very
yeah,
small.
the end goal is
The
always that org.
dream, yeah, the dream is very small. It's very
Yeah.
small. This is nothing, right? Right now, uh, I'll tell you something which happens, right? Let's say an XYZ team, right? They play against, let's say, a top team. Let's say Team Mahi, right? Now tomorrow I'm a beginner, right? I'm a beginner. Like, I'll tell you the two differences from when I started off in my career and from what I see right now, right? Um, I'm a beginner, or I'm not a very new beginner, but I've been in scene for some time, okay? And I'm playing Team Mahi, and I reach 8 rounds, okay? I like happy. Wow, I reached 8 rounds against Team Mahi or VLT. Wow, man, we are so close. And to cut that to what I used to think when I started off, at that time, obviously, it was not Team Mahi, it was the CS team, it was Brutality, it was Invisible Wings, it was the other teams, right? At that time, Neck Break. I was like, no, I
Yeah.
want to win. It does not matter if I reach 16, 14, if I reach 19, 17, if I reach 25, 23, or even in a best of three, if I win the first map and if I lose the other two maps. That does not matter. No one is going to remember that. Apart from you in your head, no one is going to remember that. No one is going to tell you after one day that, okay, oh yeah, nice try, man, you were so close. 100 साल बाद वो किसी को याद नहीं रहने वाला है. What are people going to remember after 100 years later on? If I win an international event for India in Valorant, that will be remembered 10 years down the line. Oh, okay, Global Esports or Team Mahi, they won an international event for India. That should be the goal. The goal should not be, okay, so we need to defeat Team Mahi so that we are the best in India. The best in India means dog shit to me,
Yeah.
right? It means dog shit. Right now, obviously, Team Mahi, they have been dominating, or VLT or Team Mahi, whatever you want to call it. They have been dominating, they have been winning all the events. Obviously, they have that title. But even if you ask their players, right, any player, if you tell them, would they be satisfied with that? They'll be like, no. Even they want to win international events. Even they want to win. So that should be the mentality. When we say that, maybe we are the old dogs or we are where we are, there is a reason behind that, because most of us want to do well internationally. Us not doing well is also a part of some things which we might not be doing well, but we still want to win internationally. All of us combine, let's say us or Team Mahi, we don't care about just being at the top in India. All of us want to do well internationally. I don't see that hunger from most of the younger players. They are just happy being in an org or just playing for a top team or just defeating a top team. You need to have that hunger, according to me. So unless you keep your goal to that level, okay, I want to win, I want to do this, of course I understand. As a young player, initially you want to rise through the ranks, but don't get content by just rising through the ranks, is what I mean. Have a bigger goal, have a bigger thought process in mind, have a bigger plan, right? If you want to do this as your profession, right now it's a profession because orgs are signing you up, orgs are paying you salaries. You are doing this as a profession by choice. No one is forcing you. So don't keep these small goals like, okay, don't keep watching a 3 hour movie more important than watching games of a first strike tournament. You need to have your
Exactly.
priorities, right? This is your, of course I understand you need to relax, everyone needs to have that, but sometimes you need to think of it like a startup, right? In any startup, or if it's your startup, you'd put in 20 hours a day for it to succeed, right? So think of it in the same way. Esports is right now a startup. No one is perfect. You are not playing in the European region or the North American region where you are at the top, right? So where you don't, like, we'll watch their first strike matches, right? They are not going to watch the Asian first strike matches per se, right? They might. I'm just saying as a comparison. So to reach their level, you need to put in maybe 10 more hours than them, or 5 more hours, or 8 more hours. Then do that, right? And if you don't want to, then don't cry after losing your slot in a team, or not making it big in an international event, because you are the people who have not worked hard, right? You are the ones that have caused that, not anyone else. That is what something I personally feel should be the mentality.
So I'll just quickly sum it up, okay, in three different points. Number one, if you really think you want to do well, local competition, you have to blow them out of the water. Just don't winning local tournaments for me personally would be noise if I still want if I could compete. Honestly, when I came back, when I played for paratroops, for me it was I genuinely thought it was a Sunday team. until the first month. And then you're like, oh, wait, we're being serious over here? Then, you guys need to start looking for other players, no doubt. So you need to absolutely dominate local competition. Sure, you might win tournaments, no doubt, but again, the question you should be asking if you're winning all the tournaments is, are you winning them convincingly? Are you dominating the opposition? No, then you need to work harder. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, but you need to dominate them, number one thing. Second thing, it's what the Indian circuit right now is a real life Elo hell. How everyone complains, right? I'm in gold and I want to get out. You can't. This is just how it is. This is what it is, and you have to make your peace with it. And I forgot the third point. So if I do remember it, I'll let you know. But yeah, these two things are very important. Indian circuit right now is real life Elo hell. If you want to go out, you need to blow the local competition out of water for sure.
Yeah, to sum up what like HellrangeR's trying to say is like there's this quote from one of TSM's League of Legends players. He says, "When you're not practicing, remember someone somewhere is practicing, and when you meet him, he will win." So I think that's really what
Yeah.
like HellrangeR was trying to say, that like that desire to be practicing 24/7 is what like brings you to the top of your craft and what makes you the best.
Oh yeah, this reminds me of the third thing that I wanted to say. So one thing I've believed is, I'm not saying we don't have role models, but the kind of role models we need to have, and I'm not saying this because the players are not capable. It's just that we've just not been able to achieve yet. Imagine some Indian player goes out there, joins an international log, wins. Even I'm not even talking about a team. I'm just talking about one player. This one player, an Indian player, was born and brought up in India, played in the Indian circuit, joined some European team, and actually won some major tournament. Even that would be a massive break, because I remember when Cloud9 won the CS:GO major, the entire country was celebrating. It was borderline a meme. Okay, there were watch parties that boosted the NS scene a lot, even though the NS scene was fairly big back in the day as well. But having the kind of role models that we require right now for people to even think about it, to be, and this reminds me, there used to be a team, Dare to Dream. For people to even dare to dream that big, you need role models. If you don't have role models, again, this is something Harsha Bhogle said in one of his speeches at IIM Ahmedabad. It's like, when he started off, he was commentating on All India Radio. He did not have role models to look up to, but he looked for role models in different places. So, for example, now we have digital production, right? So if I, as a caster, I'm like, hey man, this match was really good. All they have to do is pull out a digital copy and just play that on vMix or OBS. Back in the day, there were physical tapes. So imagine if the commentator says something, within 30 seconds, the guy managing those tapes has to find the physical copy, put it in the machine, find the specific spot, and then play it. So that is where he found his role models. So in a country who's obsessed with cricket, I don't know how people look past. For example, Virat Kohli. I hated that player when he came out. I absolutely despised him for his attitude. But you look at him now. You look at the transition. It's his performance that speaks for him. And it's not just us, but a lot of players internationally as well. They claim as one of the best in the world, the best in the world, one of the best in the century as well. So look for role models outside your genre as well. If you don't have role models in esports over here, look outside, open your eyes, and see how they worked hard. Just follow their footsteps. That is all you need to do. Just be focused and be disciplined. And being disciplined is literally the hardest thing there is.
Yeah,
Basically, right now we need a couple there for esports. The
Yeah,
first, yeah, the first role model. Because if we have one, then the others follow, right? If you have
yeah.
one team which wins the title internationally, then I think the others will follow.
Hell, I'm looking at you.
I think
So, so since we're talking about like the whole international like this thing, someone in chat asked, so how good are Indian teams compared to other Asian teams? So does GE scrim against them? How do these scrims go? So obviously, I'm pretty sure you cannot comment on the scrim results, and because those are
No,
things
it's
that
fine.
are
It's fine. That's not an
specifically.
issue. I'll give you something like, obviously we scrim against the top Asian teams and we try some things out. But what teams don't, or what the chat needs to understand is, the scrims are meant to try things out. They are not meant to win. So even when we play against the top teams, they might be trying something out. We might be trying something out. They won't show their entire plan. We won't show our entire plan. So right. So the scrim results hardly matter, right? Unless you are getting thrashed, you have something to learn, right? But if you're winning, they don't matter. In even in CS, we used to play against Tiger or Vici or Tailu. We won a few games here and there. They don't matter, bro. It does not matter. It's the tournament match which matters. what you do then, that matters. But yes, to answer your question, we do scrim, but we are trying some stuff out. I'm pretty sure they are also trying some stuff out. So uh, I think all the Indian teams do scrim the Asian teams. If you have, if to answer your question.
And there's one more thing I want to add to this. HellrangeR was bang on point with the fact that scrims are not meant to be won. Now, this was a thing back in CSGO as well. Most of the teams who knew how to practice would play MR30, which
Yeah.
meant that they would play out all the 30 rounds and not care about what the end scoreline is. And that the idea with scrims, of course, it's to try out things, but you don't look at the scrim as a whole. If you play, for example, you play 24 rounds in Valorant, if you play MR24, you need to look at those 24 rounds individually. When you sit down as a team, you need to have a look at those rounds individually. 24 rounds, okay. Round number one, what were we trying? What went wrong? It doesn't matter if you win or lose. Scrims, scoreline, of course, if you're being destroyed, there's a different problem that you need to deal with. But you don't look at a scrim as a whole. You look at rounds and what were you trying to do and what went wrong. That is how you learn. Because even in patch troops, as a matter of fact, I remember I think I was talking to Cliff, and I was explaining it to him like, hey man, listen, you want to scrim? Go, be my guest, but don't go in with the mentality of winning. Go in with the mentality of making sure that your fundamentals are right. Otherwise, there's no point scrim. You're just wasting your time.
Think it's the basic foundation. Yeah, to sum up like our entire like last two questions discussion, like the idea of the dreams that players have, as HellrangeR said, like coming from like having lived in the for the past 5 years in the NA scene, and like having seen like a couple of my classmates even try to make it professional, for them it's always about like it's not just about getting to that org. For them, the end goal is always worlds. It's always like, hey, I want to make it to worlds, I want to play it worlds, and then maybe, just maybe, I can win in worlds. Getting to a domestic org is just a step along the way, and that sort of mentality right now, it's very rare in the Indian scene. But I'm glad that there's at least a few teams, a few players like HellrangeR, and like even like as casters and analysts ourselves, we understand the idea. So it definitely still exists. It's just a matter of how fast it can grow within the community, how fast the rest of the community can adopt the same approach. Because it goes to you as well, chat. Like it goes to the same for the supporters. Like you need to be able to support the players so that they're confident enough to have that mentality within them. They need to know that they have the backing behind them to be like, hey, we're not going to get criticized for short-term results, for losing scrims, for example, or like losing these small tournament matches, so that when they do get to that big stage, so that when they do get to that big point, they have like, okay, you know what, we have somebody to live up for, we have ourselves to live up for, and we will do it. And that sort of like growth as a community, I think we are on the right path. It's just a matter of time, and it depends on all the cogs in the wheel to end up influencing it. I think it's really cool that we're here discussing it, even because the fact that we're discussing it means that it's definitely on the table, is definitely something that is happening, and it's definitely something that we can look forward to in the near future. But for now, I think really nice questions from the chat. Thank you so much. We'll go back to just the idea of what to expect in 2021. Brand new year. Most teams will be like, as HellrangeR mentioned, going to the bootcamp. At least the top teams that we expect, and most teams will be looking to try and uproot Team Mahi. So I'm just gonna come out with it real quick for the predictions in 2021. I'm not asking you for your rankings. I'm just asking, will the number one change?
Well, it's my job to change that.
Um, it's really hard to predict that, honestly, because it really depends on how one team Mahi is performing themselves, how hard they trying. But there is definitely a chance because nobody stays on the top forever. The
Uh-huh.
Titans are meant to fall, so I think things will definitely change. But I'm not expecting the change because of the boot camp. Again, just one small thing I'd like to bring up. We had, I think it was NTD Gaming who went to Serbia,
Yeah.
and they played with EU teams. They scrimmed against EU teams. Didn't work out. So it's not the boot camp again. It's not the facilities. As long as the mindsets don't change, under ranks change hote rahenge, it won't matter. In the larger scheme of things, honestly, the question shouldn't even be if the number one is going to change. Of course, unless we're talking just about the Indian circuit. Sure, rankings will change, but honestly, it should all be noise to the rest of the teams. Like, are we the number one in India? Doesn't matter. What we're aiming for is complete domination of the local circuit.
I'd actually be more happy if we and Mahi we lose to each other, but we are winning outside India all the events, right? I'd be more happy with that, right? Like if let's say even if Mahi is at the top and we both are winning international events, or we are at the top and we both are winning international events, or all the other Indian teams, right? Not just the two of us. Let's say 10 Indian teams are participating in all the international events, and it's only the Indian teams which are reaching the finals or the semis, or majority of the Indian teams are reaching that. I'd be more happier with that than just reaching the top in India, because if we manage to do that as a region, where we are playing Asia tournaments and we have like 3 or 4 teams in the playoffs of those events, right? That is a much bigger and better achievement than just getting teams up in India or getting orgs to have teams in India, in my opinion.
That is true.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I really like the mentality, and like for me that is so important, because as you mentioned, right, for me as a caster, I just want to see teams lose to each other back and forth, like the results go round and round, because I think we see this a lot in NA League of Legends, where like over the past few years, like there's been a couple of teams who've dominated, so that when they go internationally, those teams, they really don't have the fierceness that the other teams have from the region, where in that other region, like in Europe for example, the winners are constantly changing, so the teams that were winners in the past are trying to become winners again, and because of that the entire region is getting better, and for that region to get better you really need all the teams to step up to the mark, not just one team. So yeah, that mentality very important, and I think we know for a fact that at least 2 of the 4 teams that we expect to be at the top will have that, and then there's a bunch of newer teams coming with slightly more support from existing organizations that hopefully will bring that same mentality and hopefully improve the region as a whole. Um, Malav, you did not tell me if you think Team Mahi is going to stay at the top. So I'll ask you that, and I'll also ask you to start us off with which player is 2021 going to be the year for? Like, maybe not the entire year, even just like the first 3 or 4 months, like, because there will be a lot of tournaments. Which player do you specifically have your eye on after you tell me about Team Mahi?
Okay, so definitely talking about team, like as everyone else mentioned, right? Like the number one will never be constant. They'll always be changing. But like if you look at it the way I think the scene will progress, if the number one team in India doesn't change, the gap between the number one team and the number 10 team, I think that's going to reduce a lot coming up in this next year. Because one, obviously, meta is going to change. A lot of new teams coming in. Let's see how they adapt to the meta. Like the new teams will now get incentive to play more, as Riot will start getting involved a bit more with the scene. We'll see a lot more TOs moving in, a lot more tournaments coming in. So there's going to be a platform for each and every team to showcase their best. So the gap between number 1 and 10 will surely reduce, but I can't say for sure if Team Mahi will like stay there, because no doubt India is best right now, but the gap will definitely reduce in the future, in my opinion.
And I
So,
think you said right, you don't, as a caster, you don't want teams to keep winning, so you can maybe share the analysis sheet with us.
I mean, so I do make and I do plan on making a lot more like analysis content, but I think like even that it's like I think a lot of viewers are asking me. I think you guys know exactly what the role is, but a lot of viewers like it comes down to, as you were saying earlier, like the wellness coach, the fitness coach, the support system behind the team. It's not just about the players, it's about how you can have an organization that will give you the resources to like sort of elevate, to give you the small advantages, because when the best are playing against the best, I always say this on cast, like those small advantages, they can just blow the match out of the water. And that's all I am. I'm just a small cog. I am not like, I don't know, I'm not a coach. I say this to everybody, and I don't want to be a coach. So for me, it's all about just providing information. And yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
the analysis sheet. That's what I was trying to say, right?
See, just make an invoice and send it to him.
Done, chalo.
So since you asked your second question, players to watch out for in 2021, definitely Strix. Strix has always been on my list with number one, like really good player for Paratroops. Mamba can watch for that. He's played with him personally. And second pick, obviously, Lightning Fast is always on everyone's minds given how well he's played the Sentinel. But if I would say something like a bit of an offbeat pick, like someone like Wimp is definitely someone on my list. Like the Roy aim is there, like the Sova, he's been playing Sova, he's been playing very well. So excited to see what he can do with the future coming up.
What about you guys? So, Mamba, do you want to start us off? Like, I think you have a bit more knowledge, like as compared to the rest of the chat,
Yeah.
about what is going on behind the scenes. So any like spicy players for us to watch out for?
That makes the four of us, not just me. So here's the thing, right? HellrangeR mentioned that most of the players that we talk about are duelists,
Correct.
sure, and there's a reason why as well, because when we look at the stats, right, most of the times players on top are duelists because the kind of numbers that we're being fed, right? If you talk about ACS or kill death ratio, you don't really see flash assists or something like that, right?
Definitely.
So a lot of the underrated players are support players for sure. And while we have our own picks for players to watch out for, college stakes or any other aim god out there, right? So these players are always going to be a part of the list. But one thing I really want to see is support players making their impact in the game. I wouldn't probably name anyone because I've not really seen anyone playing that godlike support role. But I think that is what is going to cause a massive shift in the Indian Valorant circuit if there is a shift, the support players. So that is where I'll be keeping my eye out for.
And HellrangeR, like I think like for you, it's obviously going to be about the growth of global esports. So
Yeah.
maybe you can tell us about where we can expect the most number of like the most amount of growth to show for GE, because you talked about Lightning Fast a little bit. You said about how he needed that 1-2 month growth to shift into that role. I do feel like from like December start to December end itself, playing that one tournament itself, I saw so much growth within the team, just getting so much experience. So maybe tell the viewers like where they can expect GE to really grow as you get to the boot camp and as you play more and more.
Well, we want to be a self-sufficient team. Being said that, uh, like right now we are trying some things out where like I am the IGL of the team, but we would not need an IGL to tell us everything we do, right? Be it me or be it anyone who calls in the team, right? We want to reach a stage where all five players are self-sufficient and our comms and our decision making of all the players are good enough to secure us to win the rounds. So that is something we are working towards, and that is something we'll be working towards in 2021 as well, because strategies and agent pools, that is something obviously on the strategic part we'll be working on. But as a team, I think the bigger goal for us is to be a self-sufficient team, because if we are to compete in the Asian region, the decision making of all five players and the role that the reaction timings, the calls, everything has to be on point for all five of us. So that is something we are looking forward to.
Alright, I mean, you guys heard it. I know like what the progression. I mean, I don't know, but I can expect what the level of progression is going to be stage to stage. But for the chat, like I think hearing it from you specifically will be really nice. For me, I'm gonna mention like I think top four teams. Like for me, the top four are like Mahi, GE, Godlike, XCZ, which are like third, fourth. I'm not sure which one is third, which one is fourth. But like Mahi, GE right now, clearly top two teams. Other than these four, and these four expecting to get boot camps, I'm excited to see these newer teams like Aya. I heard Batman shifted out of Aya, and I think we know which
To
team he's
what
going
team?
to. No, we can't. I don't think we
I
can.
think
mention.
Batman is in the chat, right?
Batman, why don't you answer that question for us?
Yeah,
Where are you going?
chat pester
Although I
Batman
know the
till he
complete
tells us.
roster as well, but I still want to hear it from your mouth, bro.
I honestly don't even know the complete roster, but I do have some sort of knowledge as to which team it is going to be. I'll give chat a hint. Like, it's definitely a team you can expect. I don't think I can give a bigger hint because other than that, it will make it too obvious. But in general, like, these are the teams.
Your intentions are very dot dot dot.
If anyone wants to like know the whole roster, HellrangeR, can you please put your Paytm number in the chat?
Yeah,
500 rupees to know the whole roster.
no, that is too cheap, bro.
Okay,
1,000
you
rupees.
decide the rate. You
No, no,
decide
no, 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 no. Hell, you didn't get it. 500 rupees per player, bro.
per player.
Yeah,
Per
I
player.
was gonna say 1,000 per player, right?
Oh,
Not
Shit.
1,000. See, because once I reveal it, that person can put it out to everyone else, right? So
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I don't know, exclusivity is very important. Guys, if you want to know, go ask HellrangeR. And that actually brings me to my point. Like, make sure you go show your support to everybody here. You can see their links on the social media. And I know we missed a couple of questions, right? But the specific questions that I try to avoid, because this is the ranking show. We're talking about like the whole scene in general, not about the specific game or specific agent. So if you want to know more about, like, say, HellrangeR's views on agent, or Mamba's views on how he views Omen and like where he expects to see, or Rexdreams as to what he can expect in terms of analysis, or even me, make sure you just DM anybody or join them on the stream. I know Rex doesn't stream, but you can always text him. So like,
Hey.
yeah, in general, show your support, show your love. But for today, I think that's pretty much it. I will definitely be arranging more of these so you guys can get a chance to talk to all of like the people involved in the esports industry, and just the people you look up to, I hope, and the people you want to know. So yeah, keep your eye out for more of these. Thank you so much, HellrangeR, Mamba, and Rexdreams, for joining me here. It was a real pleasure talking to all of you. If there's anything you want to say before we go off, like,
Not much, man. Go out, break a leg, have fun. That's it.
alright, fair enough. Anyways, thank you so much, guys, for coming. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for coming, and we'll see you real soon with whatever is next on the series. Bye bye. Take care.